Okay, I'm back. So I have gotten this into a nice triangle shape. It's not very small yet because I haven't quite decided what I want to do with it. But I kind of decided while I was thinking about that, or thinking of other things, that I might want to do something that involves wrapping these in another color and putting it down one side. Why? Who knows? Like I said, I never really have a good reason for these things. But I got this big old wonkin' chunk of green sitting here, blue-green now, I guess. And I decided that why the heck wouldn't I just use some of it up? So that's what I'm going to do. So if I make this the right length, like so, and like so, and I think what I'd like to do is to make a couple layers with the spiral in the center. Like so. I'm always finding dog hair everywhere. I didn't want to push down too hard because I didn't want to get my green and translucent stuck together. This is not white, by the way, it's translucent. And so it only really needs to be the length of this. So that's what I want to do. I want to give myself, whatever, that, and that, and I think perhaps some black. Perhaps. I don't know why I put my scraps on top because then it gets glued on there. And so if I put this on here to get the right size, and I'm careful not to squish them all together. Like so. And I've got my stack. Do I want it in that order? Do I want green, white, black? That way black is a nice outside edge for the whole thing. Maybe if I put this on my widest setting, I will get a nice, no, I don't think I want to do that. Do I want to do that? Maybe not. Maybe I'll just do it this way. Because usually the front end, when I put it in here, ends up getting, I'm distracted by the fact that I just put a big smear of translucent on there. I want to get rid of it before I forget. I end up with a really skinny edge. Whatever edge goes in first gets compressed, and I don't really want a skinny edge. I want it to be level. So what I decided is I want these thinner, and I want to layer them again. So I kind of need it to be twice this width. So I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to do it from the other side so it's not all the white that stretches. Whatever's on the top seems to stretch the most. You could see the white was stretching quite a lot. I didn't want that to be the way it goes. A little bit more. Is that twice? Not quite. Is that twice? I don't know why I'm being so gentle with it. I could just kind of roll the crap out of it and then trim. That would make more sense than just taking my time and puttering. The beauty of this, I've said before, is that it's only going to get so thin because these are stoppers, basically, these pieces. If you roll it down as far as you can, it's still going to be the thickness of this purple thing, which is like that. If you take the purple ones off, it'll be the thickness of the pink thing. So it's kind of cool. It's for fondant for cakes. But I like using it for this because it gives me a good standardized thickness. If it's just a roller, I tend to end up pushing harder on one side than the other. Alright, we're getting there. We're getting there. My white is still spread more than my black. So I'm just going to continue working on my black side until I get it kind of even. So I should now have a stack of black, white, and green, or black, green, and white. When I trim it so that it's square, hopefully we can see that. Oh, yeah, there. You can see that. It may not be long enough to do. I may have to do a little bit more now that I've trimmed it. But then, when I do my indents, it's going to stretch it. So, let's cut this in half. Like so. And I want to lay this in it, as I said. I just realized it's nowhere near long enough. I have my 2 halves. So we will have to put the 2 halves back together. Haha, I could have just left it the way it was. That was silly of me. But if I put this in the center, the way I've got it laying here, I'm going to have 2 of these sitting side by side. Do I want that? Do I want it near the top? Actually, I kind of like the 2 side by side because I think that's going to compact this part into an interesting shape. So that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to get out my little thingy again, my little chopstick, and I'm going to try to make sure I don't get the tapered end. And I'm going to make my valley. I have so many things in my way, it's not even funny. I'm going to try and make my little valley to fit it in. And that should hopefully stretch it out also enough to be the right length. Yep. And I'm going to fit this back into my valley. Now there's going to be obviously one piece, if I happen to cut it on both sides of this join, it's going to have a weird pattern. They're not going to match up. But if it's one slice that's out of whack, I'm not too worried about it. So then I have to make an indent in the center of this one to match. I really need my craft table. Really. Is this wide enough now? Nope. I'm gonna force it to be a little longer. Like so. Set this over top. Right. And I've gone and put the black in the middle without really thinking about it, but I think that's okay. So now I have to squish these together so that it's holding that piece of spiral cane in the center. I think I'll use that for this too, just to make sure they're joined. I don't want to squish it flat, so that's why I'm trying to just push the outside edges. There might be a little air in there. Hopefully we can kind of ease that out. And now this is going to go along here. However, I still think I want some more black. I don't think I want to have the pale colors against the pale colors. So I'm just going to throw this stuff through my pasta maker real quick. Try and find some place to put all this junk that is in my way. And I want to just get a piece big enough that I can cover one side of that. I don't like having a full side of black that's on the outside edge. But I don't mind having a full side of black somewhere in the pattern because it gives a nice line. It's more interesting on the outside edge to have things that match up. So if you have this matching up to another one like this, then you're getting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things on that edge to match up to make a pattern. But if you match this side up, you're getting, I mean, there's a different tonal value because of the color change. But basically you're getting one big block of that color, and that's all you're getting on that side for interest. So that's why I try not to put, I've mentioned before, a whole bunch of black on one side. But, like I said, if it's in the center somewhere, then it's not bad. All right. So that should give me that. And I'm going to lay that on there and make sure I go up to the edge of the green stripe. I don't want to cover the green stripe because, again, that's adding interest. I want to go to the edge of the green stripe. Of course, my neighbor's decided to mow his lawn while I'm doing a video. Why not? And obviously I cut it a bit too long. So I will just trim that. Like so. And because I didn't put it all the way to the top, it may be a little long in this one corner. Also, it's not perfectly square on the corners. I haven't really made that effort yet. So, and now as we can see, this stretched out a little bit while I was working with it. I'm not going to want the waist, so I'm going to make it fatter again. This isn't necessarily something you do very often. Usually you're going the other direction, but you can do it. You can shorten to make things back where they are. It doesn't always work out smooth. But we haven't done anything really to it yet that's going to get too awful distorted. Alright, so after all that, oh wait, maybe I should put that there. Don't let me get distracted. So this is going to go here. Right? Right. I'm just trying to figure out, I'm sitting here staring at it because I'm trying to figure out if I want to pinch one end so that it's actually more of a triangular shape instead of putting a flat like that. This is what I'm thinking about. But if I do, that's going to distort that as well. What I maybe want to do is pinch both ends. Here it's going to stretch again on me. Try not to let it stretch too much. I'm just going to pinch both ends down so it's kind of more of a crescent shape when I get it done, instead of having that fat edge on it. It's getting a little soft. At some point soon I'm going to have to put this in the fridge before I do anything else with it. As you can see, there, now it's more of a crescent shape. I like that better. I do, I like that better. That's a little more interesting. And again, it stretched out on me. The clay, when it gets soft, just stretches so easily, unless you're trying to reduce it, and then not so much. It's kind of another Murphy's Law. Make sure I'm putting it on top of my black, since that's what I put the black there for. And I'm going to start this at the bottom and match it up. And since I'm not having any luck with getting this thing to stay the length I want, I'm going to trim it. Screw it, I'm going to have some waste. I give up. But at least it gives us an idea of what's going on in there. This is what we've got in there. If nothing else, we now know. So, what did I just say? I'm going to start at the top. Nope, I said I was going to start at the bottom. I'm going to match up to the bottom. There's always a good idea to pick something to match your edge to. And when you do that, you can tell what your edge is going to look like. So in this case, my edge is going to be white, black, red. Alright, so when I get to the top, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, I want to wrap over it. No, I want to leave it. I want to leave it sticking up for now. Because in my head I've already decided to wrap this triangle around my circle. In one shape, form, or another, I'm going to wrap this around this. And I'm going to probably make this quite a bit smaller before I do it. Or I'm going to make this smaller. Actually, I need to make this smaller because if I want to put this around this 3 times, or a couple times, this needs to be smaller. And that means I need to decide what's going to be my point. And I think I want my point to be with the red. So I'm going to stretch this. Some black on my fingertips. I'm going to stretch this to match the width of this. I don't want this to roll over the top of this, if that makes any sense. I worked hard to put sure I had a separate colored stripe on that end. If I'm not careful with it, I will lose it. All right. So if I make this into a triangle like so, I can still theoretically keep my green stripe. And what's funny is this one now stretched, so this would have been the right length. How ironic is that? That I cut that off there, because it wasn't the right length. So we need to make this into a triangle, and unfortunately that is going to flatten out my bullseye part of it a certain amount. What I'm going to try to do is make sure that the width goes this way, like so. Alright, so again we're at that point where I have to reduce this, and in order to do that it's going to be long and boring, so I will be back when it's done. Hi, I'm not quite there yet. I'm still reducing. However, as I was reducing, the one side that had the translucent stripe on it was getting so thin I couldn't even see it really. It was covered in the next color down. The green is what you could see. So I took the rest of my translucent and I put an extra layer back on it, as you can see. And I've been reducing. I have a little bit more to go. I have to get another inch. But seeing as how I'm impatient, I decided to cut a piece and see where we're at. So I thought I'd share this with you before I moved on. This is what we've got so far. So we've got my wide stripe of translucent that I just put on there. This is probably going to end up wrapped around this, so I'm not worried about having a big chunk of one color. And then we have this. There we go. That was our original two-part, or one of our original two parts. Was it? Yep, must have been. Anyways, so we've got our blend in the center and on here, so we have this graduated blend here, which if you put that corner together, it's not quite triangular because I'm still reducing. There we go, but if we take the time to force it into a triangle and put that together, this is what we've got on that side, which looks kind of cool. So far so good. So far I think it's getting very interesting. It's almost like butterfly petals or something like that. And so I will turn this off and finish reducing and come back. Alright, so I got looking at what I've got here, and I realized something. I realized that when I reduce this down enough to be 3 of these, it's going to be quite a size difference. I'm going to have this great big blue blob in the center. No matter what side I put this on, it's going to be quite a size difference between this and this. And I'm fine with that, per se, but I don't like the idea that I've got something that's kind of like one big color in the center of this. So I think what I decided that I want to do is I want to add some interest to this guy. And I'm going to do that by adding a stripe. Maybe 2 or 3 stripes, I don't know. So I'm going to choose the area where it was kind of sketchy anyways, because it was getting to be not a full loop of white. As you can see, it didn't make it all the way around. So then I'm going to choose this as my bottom, because this area is less than perfect to start with. So we're going to add some interest to it, and I think by adding the interest to it, it might make it look kind of like it was meant to be that way. That's my theory. So I'm cutting a slice in here, and my clay is quite sticky and soft at this point, because my house is sticky and soft. So I'm just going to try and spread this slice out a little without it gluing itself to my blade. Still not deep enough. I want to go at least to the center. I don't want to smush down the back of my bullseye, so I'm trying to be careful and gentle with it as much as I can. But now that I have this cut, I need to spread it open a little bit. And I want to drop this stripe of black into it. It's not cooperating all that well, but we're going to make it work. We're going to drop this thing down in there as far as we can, like so and like so, as you can see. And then I'm going to trim this along the length of the cane. I'm going to try not to trim the cane itself, but I want to get as close as I can. Oops. Like so. I almost got a little piece. And then we're just going to pinch it back together. I just don't want this to be one big boring blue blob in the center of anything. So at this particular moment, we have this. Right? Right. And while I like that, I don't think that's enough. So we're going to add another one. And we're going to add it here where this thin part is. So again, this one's not as deep, so I don't have to go down as far, but I'm trying not to distort the cane. I'm trying to just go down parallel to the other one, and then spread it open a bit. I really am going to have to put these in the fridge before I do much else with them. They're just that soft. And then we're going to put this little piece in there. Trying to get it far enough down there to make a difference. And I don't know if you can tell, it's actually just kind of, there's some layers of blue that have kind of, because I've cut more than once, they've come loose. And I just want to try and make sure it's all going where it's supposed to before I put the black in. So that's why I'm farting around with it. Alright. So I've got it shoved down in there as far as I can. I'm going to close it all back up so that it's back to circle-ish, and I'm going to have to give it a few rolls to make it circle-ish. I apologize once more for the moaning dog in the background. I showed you some video of him in one of my last videos. He had a cameo, so you could see why there's always this horrible noise and moaning and stuff in the background. Mr. Whiny Pants is apparently dissatisfied with his life of luxury, so he moans a lot. Now that I'm talking about him, he's shut up a little bit. Alright, so we have this. Doesn't look like much at the moment, but it might be an interesting part of the pattern once we get going. You never know. I just didn't like the idea that it was just one big boring blue blob going on. That's all. That's what I didn't like. I didn't like that idea. So once I get it all nice and smooth and back to round, which it's not quite round yet, it's getting better. And I'm going to take my pieces and I'm going to put them in the fridge for a little while. Get rid of all my bits and pieces of scrap. And then we will bring it back out when it's cool, and we will get started on piecing these two things together somehow or other to make a pretty pattern. I think so far it's turning out really cool. I think it's got lots of potential. And once we start curving this side around the circle, it'll have even more interesting things going on. So maybe what we'll do is we'll turn that black into something. Maybe we'll put a little piece of black from there to there so that it looks like it's meant to be there. Maybe I'll do that now while I have all this black sitting right here beside me. So we're going to take a little strip about the size of that. And we're going to lay that right on there. like so. Oh, that wasn't very straight. Like so, and trim it to size. And when we roll that flat, it's going to go from black piece to black piece. I always do this. I always say I'm going to leave it and get back to it, and then I think of one more little thing I'd like to do to it before I leave it. For some reason, that's just the way I roll. And so we should have like a little, you know, almost like a little curlicue from the tribal stuff, from the, what do you call that, barbed wire tattoos and stuff. They always have kind of this shape on them. So that might add some interest for when we start wrapping things. If we can meet that part up with the black that's on this part somehow or other, it might give us an interesting pattern. But again, I'm going to shut up, I'm going to turn it off, I'm going to let it cool, and then we'll play. Alright then, so I'm back. And we have had our cane in the fridge for quite a while. So it should be nice and cool. And there's the end that I had cut before, the one that we were using to look at. So I think it's looking pretty sharp right about now. And here is the piece that was adjusted at the very end, the round bit. I like to clean all this off, so now it's a little on the damp side. So I kind of decided I want to cut this in 2, not 3, because I think I want to make this somehow the top where this interesting bit is. And so it kind of works out pretty good, actually, the size that we have it right now. And I'm just going to trim that end off. It's not quite the same as the other one, but it's pretty close. There's a little air bubble, I guess, in it. That's probably why. So they didn't distort too awful much from one end to the other. Sometimes when I pull it apart and I do this, one end is changed quite a bit from the other. And in this case, it's this spiral is actually larger on the one side than on the other. Not a big deal. So anyways, I haven't actually trimmed this one yet. I also haven't, because it's been in the fridge, I haven't smoothed out that black bit very well. It's still bumped up a little bit from the rest, so I'm just going to give it a little roll. I'd like that to smooth out so that it's flat. And I'd like it to be round. And then I'm going to trim the end on this guy so we can see what we've got. This is what we've got. It's not symmetrical, but it's interesting. It doesn't always have to be symmetrical either, but it's just the habit of mine to want to make things symmetrical. I don't know why. And so when we cut this fella in half, I suppose I should trim both ends before I start doing things. There we go. And if I mark this, the length of that one, I am actually a little over a half. So I can either trim this or I can make this a little longer. I think what I'll do is, since it's not very smooth anyways, I will give it a couple of rolls and see if we can't get to half. And we're actually at 9, and this one is at 5. Wait, that makes no sense. Okay, so we're at 9 and a bit. Yeah, actually perfect. I don't know why I did the ruler for that, because it never makes more sense just to try and do math. My math is never good. I should not try to rely on it. Okay, so here's the finished and cooled. It actually looks really cool if I do it like that too. The only issue with doing it like that is that the two outside edges that are touching are kind of blah. The pattern is nice, but the stuff in between the pattern is kind of blah. Anyways, So I want to make this the top, and I want to wrap these around, and I had said I wanted to wrap around with the translucent side in the center. So let's just take a look and see what we want to do with it. I don't want to put this side on the inside because that's where most of my interest is, as you can see. And I'd like to have this match up with something else if at all possible. So either I stick with my original plan and I put the translucent in the middle, or I use the pink gradiated side. And I kind of like this idea. So I think what I want to do here is I want to have a green line. I'm just going to make sure I have a nice point on my triangle. I'd like to have a green line, so I don't want to take it all the way to the black. So I'm going to try and stick it down right there-ish, like so on both ends. And I'm just trying to glue them together before I start bending things so they don't come apart. So squish, 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 like so. And then I want to round this guy down towards, and actually maybe I should just be giving it a little squeeze with my fingers because the heat from my hands will make it easier to bend. The white and the translucent seems to be the colors that are the driest whenever I try to do something like this, and they've been in the fridge. They seem to be the ones that crack. So I'm just going to gently kind of roll it around and try to stick it down, and then we'll lift it up and we'll see how it looks. Alright, so we have this. Now, where is this one looking backwards? So that matches that, right? Now, what do I want to do with this? I was kind of thinking I wanted to wrap like so. Kind of think I do. Alright, so we're going to do the same thing, and here's where we're going to get interesting. Are we going to do it opposite? I think we're going to do it opposite, because what I think I want to do, I want to leave that green stripe, right? And if I do that, again, I'm going to make sure my points are nice and strong. If I do that, then that means my cane is a little wider than the circle part of it, as you could see from what I was doing there. And I wanted it to be opposite, so I don't want the same edge. Yeah, so in this side, the pattern is closer to the center than on this side. So basically, right, I'm just kind of figuring an easy way to explain this. Normally, if I wanted to be symmetrical, I would go opposite with the pattern, which actually is... Nope, 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 where am I here? White in the center, yes. Yeah, so it would be white in the center, it would be this pattern out closest to the farthest point, so they're on the opposite ends of this area, right? So that would be symmetrical if I do this. But what I think I want to do is I want to flip it around so it's not symmetrical. And the reason I want to do that is for more interest. That's my thought. Because at one point or another, I'm going to make this a square or I'm going to make this a triangle. And when I do, because they're on the same plane kind of thing, they're not really going to join up in the pattern. So I don't think that it's going to be something where these two things join together and it looks pretty. If you see what I'm saying. And so if it's not going to be there for a reason, so that it's going to match up, then I might as well make it stand out. So I don't want to cover this up. I still want to have that black part because it might end up being the top of my triangle. if I decide to make this a triangle, it will probably be like this, with that at the top, right? If I decide to make it a square, I will have to push these corners this way to make it a square. But I still, either way, I want something interesting on this edge. And I still want my green showing. So I think I'm going to stick this down the same way I did the other one. I'm going to try and stick it. Try and stick it down. Stick it, stick it, stick it. So there's still some green showing. Like that. Like that. And I want to get it glued down good. It's a little harder when I don't have a flat edge to put it on until I'm there. So there's my flat edge in that case. Now this other piece is sticking up in the way, it's a little harder. But as you can see, this is now long enough that it's going to overlap. So this is basically going to wrap onto this one. And so we're covering translucent with translucent, so we're still going to end up with the same color down the center of this stripe. But inside the pattern, that circle is now encased in these two pieces, which is why I'm thinking it might be the easiest to make this into a triangle with this as the base. So once we lift that up, we have this, right? So this overlapped this at the bottom. So it's not symmetrical because I did it opposite, but it's interesting, right? If we push this together to make a triangle, we're going to have all these stripes showing. And then we're going to have this pattern on this side. We're going to have a different stripes on this side, and we're going to have this interesting black thing going on at the point. So the easiest shape to make this into probably would be that triangle. So that's probably what I'm going to do. And it's going to take a little work because I have to bring these edges quite a bit closer together because it's very wide right now, as you can see. So I'm just going to pinch it and push it. And I'm pushing with my thumbs, but I'm also pushing here. I'm not going to worry about the point yet because I have to kind of get it to something I can work with first. So once it's down on the ground and the bottom is flat-ish, it's easier to get my point taken care of. So right now, I'm just trying to get the width of it fixed, if that makes any sense. And this, of course, is going to make it taller. When I push these in, the clay is going to go up. It's just the way these things seem to work. Is that it kind of goes into whatever direction you're not pushing on is where the clay goes. Which is why when you're pushing in the center to reduce it, it goes out. Alright, so it's not quite flat on the bottom yet, but it's getting there. And this is another one of those moments where it's going to take me a while to do this and it's going to be boring to watch. So once I get this pinched into a point, I think I'm going to turn off the camera and back on again so I can do what I usually do, which is to speed up this part. And we will get back to it afterwards and we will take a look. Because the only thing that we may decide to do after we get this reduced is that we may decide to wrap one portion of it. I still have this big wonkin pile of green. And we may decide we want to wrap one portion of this somewhere. If there's a spot that looks kind of boring, we might add a little stripe of green. So we'll see. It's an option that's there if we need it. So time to reduce. Okay, I'm not going to reduce it a huge amount when it's a triangle because I just find it's more awkward to do it that way than it is to do it when it's square. So at this point, we have this. It's not a perfect triangle because I'm not trying to keep it a triangle. So I just wanted to see what it looks like. So at this point, here we go. Now remember, this is translucent. The light's going to shine through that quite well. It's also going to shine through some of the green, some of the blue. Should be quite pretty. We have this little white loop in there that's got lots of interest to it. Can't quite remember how we got that. I guess I'll remember when we start editing the video. So there's the one side. If we flip the other side, because I said, remember, oops, it's nice and soft, so I'm trying not to distort too much, but if we go to this side, because they're not quite the same, we did not do symmetrical, so we have this. So our little white blobs line up nicely, and our gradiated from our fan fold at the beginning lines up nicely, so that's pretty. And this and this and this and all these little things are going to match up when we do the outside edge of that. And then the last one is the two gradiated edges lining up like so. Now because of the shape of it, this is the easiest one to make into a square. As you can see, it's almost square now, so we'll have to do less distortion if we do this way. Kind of like it. It's kind of funky looking. It looks like bug eyes, like a little antenna and some funky looking bug eyes and a little mouth. It's kind of cool. All the patterns are nice, so no matter which way we go and what we reduce it to, we're going to get something interesting. If we turn this into a big square, it's going to distort a certain amount, like so, and the middle of our square is going to give us funny looking flowery things, probably, once we put it together. Because if this is a square and we line it up to another square, it will be like so. This will be one of the corners, that will be the other corner. So that's interesting. I can't really decide which way I want to do it. I kind of like the idea of making it easy on myself and having less changing to do. Either way we go with one or the other, we're going to get this guy in the center. And I kind of like the idea of him not being a flower in the center. I kind of like this. I think it's interesting. And it's also easier. So what I'm going to end up doing at this point then is cutting it in half and turning it into a square. So we're going to save that guy. And we're going to see if I mark that. I'm trying to get it centered-ish. Yeah, okay, that one's better. There we go. And I just said I wanted to put these two together. So we got to line our pattern up nicely, because once it's there, and that's the way it's going to stay. Match our edges, match our pattern. And as you can see, it got distorted a bit while I was doing it. So we have to do both ends. You can't just match one and then go to it. You have to match one and then kind of wiggle along until you have all the edges matched up on the sides. Oops. Yeah, okay. I'm going to trim as little of this as I can because I need to see to line up, but I also don't want to have one side shorter than the other. I should have done that first, as per usual. Alright, so where were we? Get this guy lined up as well as we can and glued together. And then we wiggle our edges until they line up. I have a fly buzzing around my head. It's going to make me absolutely nuts. It's one of the few things I really don't like about summer is bugs. Okay, so this has got a little nick in it because it's part of the end that was distorted and I didn't get it all off when I cut, but I think you can see where the pattern's going. It's lined up on that end and it's lined up on that end. And now we're going to make it into a square. As you could see from the end, it's actually almost square already. we just kind of have to push these corners in, like so. So if you've watched any of the other videos when I've talked about making triangles into a square, I mean, if you get your triangles into perfectly like 90-degree triangles when you're done with them, you don't have to do this, but I don't have the patience to deal with the triangles. I'd rather deal with a square. I find it easier. Anyways, off topic. If I've mentioned this before, or you haven't heard me mention it before, because I know I have, to make the triangles into a square usually involves pushing the sides upright, because when you get it and it's not quite perfect triangles, your piece ends up like this, right? As you can see, the slopes aren't 90 degrees on the corners. And so in order to make this square, you have to push this edge that's sloping that way upright, and you have to push this edge that's sloping that way this way. So you're squeezing these opposite corners to make it square. You're kind of torquing the whole thing a little bit, just a little bit. And usually the corners that are out of whack, when you lay it flat, the corners that are out of whack are the ones that are sticking up higher. And you can cheat by just pushing the corner down with a roller, but it distorts more. So if you want your pattern to be nice, you kind of have to go through this little bit of wiggling. You go that way on one side, you go that way on that side, and eventually everything's upright. It's kind of hard to explain so that it doesn't sound ridiculous, but anyways, I usually just push it towards my hand. I use my hand as the upright, and I keep pushing it towards my hand. And I assume that once I get around all four sides, whatever side seems to be not upright, I push towards the opposite hand. And at some point, after a few turns, they will all look more or less upright, and that's when you know that you've got enough of a square. Is it? Not quite. This one here is still quite a bit out of whack. You have to have enough of a square going on that you're not going to distort a ton of it before you start rolling. Once you get to the point where you can start rolling, then it's all gravy from there. I'm just going to pinch my corners while I'm at it. So, do we look almost square now? We might if I didn't have all this unevenness on the ends. There, see, when I cut it off, it looks fairly square. Not perfect, but close. And again, because these corners were raised compared to the rest, they're going to go somewhere. That clay is going to go somewhere. So when you start squishing things, those are the corners that come out. The corners that had to be pushed in to make it square. And you end up with pieces sticking out. It's not a bad thing. It just means that you've done your job and you've moved the clay. I'm not going to worry about cutting that end off. I know it's distorted. I kind of like the way the pattern's going. But since I'm going to start rolling now anyways, I should have my glasses on. Since I'm going to start rolling now anyways, I'm not going to worry too much about it. And I'm going to get this down to a decent size, and then I'm probably going to cut it because I'm planning to put it on something, probably this guy. I have this dish that I found that I think will be kind of cool, and I'm probably going to put this on here, but because the edge is this big, I want my canes to be half that size so that I get the full pattern on the edge. So I'm probably going to reduce it down bigger than I need, but to a smaller size than this. And then I'm going to cut it in half and reduce the other part down small for the sides. So I can use bigger pieces for the lid and smaller pieces for the side of the same pattern, if that makes any sense. I probably should have kept some sort of clay bits. I don't really have anything left but the green, so I guess it'll have to be green, white, and black or something if I want to make some sort of different pattern to use. Let me show you what I mean. 1 second. These are some things I've been working on. So a lot of the time when I'm doing something, this is what I mean by having just the right size pattern for the side. So this is a tin that I got from the dollar store. Looked like this. And so I made this cane and I reduced it to the size so that it would fit. Now what I did is I screwed up. I forgot that the top overlaps the bottom. So I should have done my cane only up to this point so I could get the lid back on it the way it should have. I didn't think of that. I just covered the whole side. And so what I ended up having to do is I ended up having to put this little raised black piece here so that I would be able to sit the lid back on it, as you can see. And then the top piece was so thin, I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't want to waste cane because it's not only going to line up on the outside edge, so you're not getting much of a pattern. So I actually kind of made like a Natasha bead. I did a twist and a roll and the whole spiel. And I cut some slices and I put it around the outside and I baked it. I wasn't sure what was going to happen with the plastic. The plastic turned white milky. So it did not melt, but it turned milky, so it didn't look very nice. So I took some cane and I filled in the top square. So this one is done all with the same cane or scraps from the same cane, right? And it's fine because it's not very big. But if you had a really big something and everything was all the same pattern, it might get a little boring. So in the next project, I'm just trying to get stuff out of the way so I can show you. In the next project that I did, which was this one, I did this cane. And when I got this cane partially done, I decided that it was going to be really busy and really bright. And I didn't necessarily want the whole bowl done in one really big bright pattern. I thought that might be a bit much. Now, as you can see, it still is a bit much. I may have gone overboard with the whole idea. But partway through, I decided I would use the spare pieces that I had left because this was extruded. So I had squares and triangles that I put together to make this, with some black strips in between. And so I had some of the extruded pieces left over that weren't necessarily going into the main cane, and I decided to make a smaller cane. These are made out of a smaller cane, a little rectangular cane. So I used the scraps to make that to give me interest, so I'd have something besides a whole bunch of this. And I didn't have enough of this to do everything I wanted to, but I had enough kind of to do this, and then I put another. It's all organic. I kind of just threw it on as I went and kept adding to it. And when I got out to here, I realized, well, I still had some corners to fill. And I didn't have enough of this cane left over, so I ended up putting this in, which was leftovers from something else. So I filled the corners with these, because again, I like symmetry, and it was the only way I could think of to stretch what I had left. Anyways, this is all totally off topic. But the point I'm trying to make is I probably should have kept some colors to make a smaller cane for contrast. Because it's not small, it's also not huge, but it's big enough that all one pattern might be a little bit boring. So maybe when I get done, I will do something with the leftover green that I have and some white and some black to give some sort of contrasting cane, just to break it up so it's not all this pattern over and over and over and over and over. So that was a totally unnecessary aside, I'm sure. But if you get my point, a whole lot of one pattern, no matter how nice the pattern may be, a whole lot of one pattern might just be overpowering. And in the background you can hear my dog slurping, and he's going to make me insane. So I'm going to have to go deal with him. And I also just put a little piece of black something or other, which probably came off that plate, in my cane. I will be back in a moment.